Welcome everyone to another episode of Power Core Productions and Podcastings. I'm your host, John Arrington, back to hit you with another video, and today we're going to be doing What If Deku Was a Power Ranger Heroes of the Morphing Grid, Part 5. Part 5 isn't going to be overly long simply because it's the final exams of the first semester in the conclusion of Season 2 of My Hero Academia. And as a whole, this is really just going to be for the setup of the Heroes of the Morphing Grid My Hero Academia movie 2 Heroes that's going to come out tomorrow night. So if anything, this video is really just a precursor to wrap up everything for Season 2 as we go straight into the movie and everything beyond that. So that's just something to keep in mind with this video, and I do appreciate all the love and support that I've been getting for this series and as a channel as a whole. Again, as always, can't do it without you guys. You guys make the channel grow, you guys make the core grow, and I am genuinely excited for everything that is to come now and in the future. Tomorrow, we're going to be having 2 more videos. That's going to be What If Yamato Was the Captain of Team 7 Part 4. That's going to wrap up the first half of the Naruto series. And we're going to be doing the My Hero Academia movie 2 Heroes. That'll cover the movie portion of My Hero Academia with What If Deku Was a Power Ranger Heroes of the Morphing Grid. So that'll wrap up the uploads for the week, and then next week we will continue with What If Yamato Was Captain of Team 7. That'll cover the Naruto Shippuden aspect of the series, as well as continuing What If Deku Was a Power Ranger. And we'll be starting another series as well. You know, I'm trying to build a little bit of variety when it comes to the channel as a whole, you know, not do too much of one or too much of the other. So the way the upload scheduling will be is on Monday, you will get What If Yamato Was the Captain of Team 7. On Tuesday, we will get What If Deku Was a Power Ranger. That'll go into My Hero Academia Season 3. That'll cover the first half of Season 3. Wednesday, we will start a brand new series. I won't tell you what it is, but that's just something you'll have to look forward to. So that's to come on Wednesday. Then on Thursday, we go right back into What If Yamato Was the Captain of Team 7. Then Friday, What If Deku Was a Power Ranger, and that'll conclude Season 3 of that portion of the story. And then on Saturday, we'll continue with part 2 of the new story that's on the channel. So that's just something to look forward to for next week's upload scheduling and everything that's going to come. Basically, my goal is to grind and work it out Monday through Saturday, pretty much 1 video a day. That's how it's going to be, and the new format is going to be a more of an overview of the story with detail added in when necessary, so that the video isn't overly too long. Around 35, 40, 45 minutes is going to be the new length of my videos, so keep that in mind as we go forward into the fall season of Power Core Productions and Podcastings. But anyway, without further ado, let's get into the story of What If Deku Was a Power Ranger? Heroes of the Morphing Grid, Part 5. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. As Class 1A would have gathered together after their internships, there would be some shocking news delivered to the rest of the class. Mr. Aizawa would stand in front of everyone as he would announce that Minoru Mineta would no longer be a part of Class 1A. This would come as a shock to many of the other students, as they had no idea that he would drop out so easily. Even if the boy was a pervert, it was still a little disheartening to lose a classmate. Aizawa would explain that after the events of the sports festival along with the USJ, Mineta simply felt that he was too inadequate to really be a hero. Instead, he decided to move his talents to marketing and general studies. Mineta actually having a talent for it, as when it came to taking pictures of women, his photos were actually top of the line and pretty good quality. He could really do some work with promoting female heroes, as long as he was able to keep his perversions in check. But still, as he would move over to general studies, this meant that Class 1A would move from 20 students to 19, and they would soon have to find a new member to fill in that role. Although, with the final exams less than 2 weeks away, there was really no other time to fulfill that, and they would simply have to move on with what they had for now. As Aizawa in the back of his mind, knew that there were bigger things to worry about than just losing one student. With the upcoming final exams of the first semester, Aizawa and the few other staff who knew about the situation of the Power Rangers was now even more aware that serious training was going to be needed if the students were ever going to advance in their heroics. All Might, along with wanting to help train the other students, also had his own issues, that being finding a suitable replacement for him, as he had not given the powers of One for All just yet. But still, there were a few good candidates. There was a third-year student who seemed to be a prime candidate to receive the power. But then there were also many of the first years in Class 1A, among many of them being Rangers themselves. That could be a great boost in power, although it might be too much for any one of them to handle on their own. As All Might would ponder many of the questions that he would have left answered, Principal Nezu would also wonder if it would be wise to allow the students to use their morphers during the final exam. Aizawa stating that it should be fine since they were going to be heroes anyway, and their morphers were going to be a part of them whether they want to or not. Of course, they would always need to make sure to train up without the morphers, as their quirks could probably be the only thing they may have someday, assuming the Ranger power was ever lost for any given reason. And after Alpha had recorded the data given from the brief fights that he had seen with the Rangers while morphed, it was becoming more and more apparent that the morphers were starting to merge with their quirks, as shown by how their weapons and abilities worked. When it came to Izuku Midoriya, his flame quirk, Green Flame, seemed to work well with his Dragon Zord powers, that being that he could emanate fire from all portions of his body, similar to the number 2 hero Endeavor. Bakugo's explosions had more ferocity to them, as seen with his Power Sword, which could create explosions on impact, making far greater damage and critical blows to his enemies. Todoroki's powers seemed to take a different turn as well, as with the Power Axe, his gun mode and axe mode worked as duality along with his own quirk, that being that his gun mode could shoot out torrents of ice, while his battle axe mode could give out strong slashes of heat as well. And now their newly lamented Blue Ranger, Tenya Ida, also had a boost in his quirk as well, that being that his Recipro Burst could take new form, as in his Ranger form, his flames turned from red to blue, and his Recipro Burst turned from blue to white flame. Extremely hot and with extremely deadly speed and accuracy, it truly did meld well with his quirk in and of itself. And so, Aizawa would decide that it would be best to allow them to use their Ranger powers during the exams, and that they would simply have to augment the teachers to be able to handle it. Even so, All Might believed that he would be more than capable of taking them on, and he had 2 students that he would like to test personally. As Class 1A prepared for their final exams, many of the students would remark that they hadn't really been studying as much as they should have, eventually leading to Momo Yayorozu, the second in charge of the class, would decide to hold a study group of her own to help get any students who were falling behind to be caught up and prepared for the test, or at least be prepared as much as they could be, as everyone were gathering their own ideals and preparing for whatever the final exam had to throw their way. Of course, many wondered what the final exam could actually be outside of the written portion, some hearing from the higher-ups that the last few years they had merely just done some combat training against some of the robots from the entrance exams, many of the students believing that this would be rather easy since they had already handled those robot beings before, that being in the entrance exam as well as during the sports festival, so there really wouldn't be too much to worry about. However, those dreams would quickly be dashed when it would be revealed that their opponents for the final semester was not going to be against your standard robot, but rather it was going to be against the teachers and staff of UA themselves. Of course, they would be wearing personally made restraints as to not go all out, as if they did so, they could potentially harm some of the students. But they would be aiming to win, and they wouldn't be going easy on them at all. Explaining that the main goal of the exam was going to be a fight or flight situation. Either they would fight and incapacitate the heroes who would be playing the roles of the villains, or they would have to fight to escape the designated area within an allotted amount of time. If they could perform either one of the tasks, then they would be able to pass the final exam. However, if they didn't, then they would be failed and would have to take remedial classes. This putting fear into more than a few of the students, as they didn't want to fail after coming this far. But even more so, the idea of going up against the teachers in the practical test would be something that would be more than a little daunting for many of the students in Class 1A. However, they would simply train and prepare to try their hardest, as they had no idea what to expect. The teachers would break everyone into pairings of 2. However, with 19 students, there would have to be a 3-man team. And the 3-man team would be the team of Deku, Bakugo, and Todoroki. Class 1A being more than shocked to see that those 3 would actually be a pairing, but on top of that, to wonder who their opponent would be in the final exam. As everyone would gather in the control room to watch as the pairs would all be broken off to take their test one at a time. Eventually, the time would come for the 3-man duo to go into action, and their opponent would be none other than the #1 hero himself, All Might. As everyone would look on as the battle was getting ready to begin, All Might, with his restraints at the ready, would tell them not to hold back at all, and that they should probably use their morphers if they wish to stand a chance against the #1 hero. As the 3 boys looked on nervously, Bakugo would lead the charge, as he was more than eager to prove his mettle, and he felt he had the power to do so. As the 3 boys would pull out their morphers, standing side by side as they would morph in unison, looking kind of cool and badass to a few of the students. They would soon yell out Mastodon, Dragonzord, and Tyrannosaurus. In a flash of black, green, and red, the black, green, and red ranger would now all be prepared. Bakugo going into gauntlet mode as his gauntlets would emerge over his ranger uniform. He would tell the other 2 to stay back as he wanted the first shot at All Might. Deku and Todoroki yelling at Bakugo to come back, but he had no time to listen. However, before Bakugo could even land the first punch, All Might would send a punch of his own. It would be just inches from his face, but the force could be felt for miles all the way around. Bakugo would stop coldly in his tracks, as All Might would stand towering over the young ranger. Well, don't let that stop you, young Bakugo. Do show all of that bravado you had a few moments ago. Is the first of my punch simply enough to stop you and stop in your own endeavors? Bakugo wouldn't know what to say at this moment. Just the power emanating just inches away from his face was more than enough to stall him in his tracks. He had never felt anything like that before. And this was supposed to be an All Might that was handicapped. This was handicapped All Might? If this was All Might handicapped, then he didn't stand a chance if he wasn't wearing those restraints. As All Might would prepare for another attack, Todoroki and Deku would push Bakugo out of the way, as All Might would deliver a smash to the ground, causing a massive crater. Deku telling Bakugo to snap out of it and to get himself together, while Todoroki would go on the defensive, shooting out a massive torrent of ice, creating a thick wall trying to buy themselves some time. But it wouldn't last very long, as with a single smash, All Might would blow away the ice in every single direction. For this three-man team, the rules still stood the same. Either handcuff All Might, or one of them had to at least make it to the finish line before their time was up. All Might decided to take all three of them on, believing that this would be a good way to give them some training. After all, with the odd number of students, there was going to be a three-man team regardless. But in either case, this still proved to be more than daunting for the three Rangers, as All Might would systematically pick them off one at a time. First, starting with Todoroki, smashing away at his ice and tanking most of his flame, as he would deliver a gut punch, sending the Black Ranger crashing into the side of a building. The other students looking on in horror as they thought All Might have gone too far, but Todoroki were still fine. He could feel the damage, and he definitely wasn't going to be sleeping well in the morning, but he could still tank the attack to an extent. Alpha being relieved, but also not too shocked. After all, the Ranger powers were pretty durable, and could make one much more stronger than they realized. It was just that the three students need to realize that they had more power than they really knew. They had to trust in the power, knowing that it would protect them. It was their faith in their own power that would be just as crucial as the power they could muster themselves. All Might would then turn his attentions over to Deku, who would be more than nervous about going up against his number one idol. However, All Might would quickly smash any of those ideas, as he would deliver a punch of his own. Deku crossing his arms over his face as he would try to take the hit, before being sent crashing into a power line himself. Bakugo, stilling his nerves, would decide that he wasn't going to be the one that failed here. As he would leap forward into the air, he would use the stunning grenade, blinding All Might just enough before delivering a high-powered explosion to his chest, pushing All Might back a few feet as All Might could feel a little sting behind that attack, as Bakugo would yell that he had no intentions on losing here, and he was going to win with or without the damn dead weight. As Deku and Todoroki would slowly get back to their feet, they would see Bakugo continuing to launch explosion after explosion at All Might continuing to tank and take the assaults like they were nothing, feeling as if they were merely mosquito bites. As he would catch Bakugo by the hand, he would pull him up into the air before flinging him like a rag doll, Bakugo crashing into the ground. As the three boys had All Might trapped in a triangular formation, each one standing at an opposite direction, All Might would ask them, rather confidently, what they planned to do. Were they going to stay and fight, or were they going to run? Of course, running would be futile, but if they thought that those fancy powers of theirs were going to allow them to hold down the number one hero so easily, then they would be surely mistaken. All Might was really playing up the role of the villain, and the teachers could tell that the boys were all conflicted in their own way. They were intimidated by All Might's power, despite having massive power themselves. Ida looked on worried for his fellow Ranger counterparts, believing that they truly did need a lot more help than this. While he wanted to believe that they could rise above, he was still worried, but who wouldn't be? They were going up against the number one hero, the symbol of peace in the world itself. Even if he was only at half strength, that was still half strength of All Might. Sure, the Ranger powers could make them a little stronger, a little more durable, a little faster. It could give them the much needed boost when it came to battle, but that was just battle against regular villains. This was All Might. There was no telling if they had enough power to conquer the number one hero. Deku would yell out to the others that if they were going to make a stand, it had to be now, and that they were going to have to work together, whether if they wanted to or not. He would yell out to Bakugo the most, and Todoroki would do the same, asking the Red Ranger to just lend them their aid in this fight. Bakugo would just yell at the two of them to stop bossing him around and telling him what to do, stating that if they were going to have a plan, he was going to make one. He just needed some time to think. Deku and Todoroki would say that they would buy him that time. as Deku would emit his green flames, Todoroki his fire and his ice. The two would start to work on buying Bakugo that time. Deku charging in with no hesitation, blasting out fireballs left and right, using his dragon dagger to send out a large slash of green flame. All Might could feel the intensity of the heat, and he could see that Deku truly was emulating the number 2 hero Endeavor, noticing the way he moved in the air with his flames, the way he fought, and the way he carried himself. He had definitely copied and had been studying some of his moves, as well as a few other heroes. When All Might went in for one of his classic punches, however, what would catch him off guard the most was how Deku was able to dodge. He could see that Deku were truly a fanboy of his, someone who had been studying him for years, idolizing him, looking at his every moves. Deku had shown just how dangerous of a hero he could really be someday. He was a hero that always paid attention to detail. He never overlooked the little things, even things that All Might himself might consider to be minor. Deku proved to be more than capable here, coordinating with Todoroki, telling him when and where to strike, timing their assaults just perfectly enough to stun the number 1 hero and keep pushing him at bay. As the time was starting to tick, Bakugo would be the one left to create a plan. His teammates were buying him this time, and he couldn't afford to let them down. However, with that being said, he still wanted to win more than anything else. Even if he was a Power Ranger, even if he was a part of a team, above all else, he was aiming to be the number 1 hero. Bakugo, the Red Ranger, would be the number 1 hero, regardless to who his teammates were. That was never going to change. As Bakugo would yell to them to create cover, the two boys would do so, Todoroki creating a large wall of ice, while Deku would shoot at the ice at once, creating a large veil of steam, blinding All Might just long enough for the three to escape and hide, as All Might would blow away all of the steam with a single smash, looking around to see that his 3 targets had left. As he looked around, he could see that they weren't running towards the exit, so it was obvious they were hiding. As he would start his run around the city, he would look for his opponents. Meanwhile, in the alleyway, Bakugo, Deku, and Todoroki would be collecting their breaths, as the Green and Black Ranger had put in a lot of work to hold off All Might, while Deku was immensely tired, as he wasn't entirely used to using his flames for this long period of time. Bakugo would state that he had a plan that just might work, but they were going to have to time it just right. Asking what exactly was his plan going to be, Todoroki thinking that Bakugo was just going to charge in an all-out assault against All Might. Bakugo would actually show off his brilliance here. He would state that it would be idiotic to fight All Might even if they all ganged up on him. The 2 other heroes being shocked that Bakugo would actually use such reasoning and logic. Bakugo would simply snarl, stating that he could be reasonable and logical when he wanted to. He just chose not to be. But that their main focus was trying to get out. Truthfully, as much as he didn't want to admit it, they were nowhere near the power of All Might, and this was an All Might half power. If they tried to fight him, they would all be defeated and would fail. However, they needed to create a situation that could hold off All Might just long enough. Bakugo and Deku already knew the secret that All Might had, and Todoroki had briefly been brought in on it as well. The secrets of One for All, as well as the injury that All Might had sustained a few years ago. While the 3 boys didn't like playing on such a cheap tactic, they knew that they had no choice in the matter. Their goal wasn't going to be to beat All Might. It was going to be to stun him just long enough so that one of them could escape. However, when it came to the escape, it would have to be a matter of who would actually be the fastest. between all three of them, it was decided Deku would be the one to escape. While Deku didn't like this plan originally, Bakugo would simply yell at the Green Ranger, telling him that it was the only choice that they had in the matter. He was the only one who could fly without using his hands, basically using his flames at the bottom of his feet as jet engines. He was going to have to put every ounce of his quirk and ranger power into one solid burst and shoot straight towards the exit when the time came. And when he did so, he couldn't afford to turn back. While Deku didn't like the idea of leaving his comrades behind, Bakugo and Todoroki would assure him that this would be their only way of victory. But he was going to need one thing from Deku though, if they were going to pull this trick off. As All Might would continue running around the city, looking for the young heroes, with less than 5 minutes remaining until the end of the exam, he would hear a yell, a loud cry, coming from just behind him. Bakugo would be the one, yelling out to All Might, telling him that the number one hero was starting to get old, and that he probably needed to retire. All Might would simply smirk as he turned back to face the Red Ranger, telling him that if he could talk like that to his superiors, then he better be ready to take the punishment that came with it. Bakugo would simply look with a smug grin, as he would create explosions and rocket straight towards All Might. The students in the monitoring room would look on in horror, realizing that Bakugo didn't have his grenade gauntlets with him, wondering what exactly he could be doing in this situation. He didn't have his gauntlets, and he didn't have any other protection. He was just launching himself straight towards All Might, and All Might was doing the same. Aizawa was looking on even worried, wondering if they should just call off the exam now. He believed that his students were more than capable of passing, but still, this could be a little bit of overkill. As All Might was about to launch another smash directly at Bakugo, Bakugo would switch out a power coin for another one on his belt buckle. Instantly, Bakugo's body would be surrounded by the Dragon Shield. As All Might went for the punch, he would punch directly into the Dragon Shield, Bakugo feeling the pain but also feeling the protection that the shield gave him. As he would just narrowly be able to tank the attack before being sent flying, Bakugo would yell at the two to do it now. Both Deku and Todoroki would emerge from either side of All Might, with All Might's fist proudly in the air. His lower abdomen would be completely exposed. The two Rangers would get as close as they possibly could to All Might, until their fingers were just inches away from his lower abdomen, each on either side. Bakugo would yell at them to pull the trigger, and both Rangers would do so. As they did, they would pull the pin in the grenade gauntlets that stored up all of Bakugo's sweat, now enhanced with Ranger power. You can only imagine how powerful the attack would be. Blasting away a full point shot at both sides of All Might would cough up massive amounts of blood as he could feel the damage. He felt as though his ribs had been hit by a missile. As All Might would yell out in pain, he would deliver simultaneous punches to both of the Rangers, as they would be sent crashing into either side of the wall. As All Might was now on one knee, Bakugo would get up with whatever strength he had left, pulling out his power sword as he would go charging straight towards All Might. Making sure the blade was at the blunt end, he would smash it directly into All Might's face, an explosion being created on impact as All Might would be sent flying to the ground. As Deku and Todoroki were slow to get up, Bakugo would throw the power coin back to Deku to give him back his dragon shield, as Deku would hand over one of the gauntlets. As they did so, All Might would quickly get back to his feet, albeit injured and a bit stunned, as Todoroki would now play his role, creating the largest ice wall possible. As Bakugo prepared for the second assault, the two Rangers would look to Deku and yell at him to run. Deku, albeit hesitantly, would start to do so, with now less than a minute to go until the exam would be over. All Might would summon whatever strength he had left and punch away at the ice, but Todoroki would continue to make more and more, leading into an onslaught as All Might kept punching away at the newly forming ice walls over and over again, chipping away until finally reaching the Black Ranger. As Todoroki would give into one final attack, All Might would deliver the closest smash directly into Todoroki's gut, causing him to fly out of Ranger form as he would go crashing into the ground. As Bakugo would look back at All Might, now with only one gauntlet fully functional as the other one had been completely destroyed. He would launch everything he had into a final explosion, the explosion hitting All Might directly in the chest, doing little to nothing, as All Might would hold Bakugo in the air by the arm. Bakugo, breathing heavily as he would soon pass out, his Ranger form being extinguished as well. As All Might would sit the young boy down, he would look to see where the young Izuku Midoriya had gone, as he could see Deku was already rocketing towards the exit. All Might would start to lunge as well. In one single leap, he were now just closing the gap between the two. With under 20 seconds to go, Deku was less than a few meters away from the exit. All Might now quickly on his tail, reaching out his long arms to grab Deku by the leg. As his fingers came within an inch of the young Deku, Deku could feel the desperation within him. He knew he needed to burst, but he could feel that he was at his limit. He felt as though he couldn't go any farther, that if he tried to, he would just burn out. However, what would flash through his mind would be the images of his comrades, thinking about how much they had given to this fight, thinking about how they had given it their all until the end, and he had no right not to do the same. As the clock reached under 10 seconds, Deku, less than 10 feet away from the exit, All Might's hand about to grasp on Deku's leg. Deku would turn his body around as he would hold out both of his hands together. He knew that if he were going to win, he would have to go all out. He would have to go beyond. He would have to go plus ultra. As Deku would cup his two hands together, All Might, his face beaming forward at Deku. Deku would yell that he was not going to lose today, putting every ounce of power he had left. Deku would now morph out of his Ranger form, knowing that it was going to take everything, as a green fireball emitted from his hand. The hottest fireball he could ever make, a bright glow of green. All Might would gulp, as he knew this attack was going to sting. As Deku would yell, "Dragon Shot!" as a green beam of flame would shoot directly out of his hands, creating a large crater between he and All Might, as All Might would be shot back, just enough for Deku to be shot forward, passing directly past the gate with just 3 seconds to go. His team had won. As All Might had taken the blow straight to the face, All Might would crash back into the ground, coughing up even more blood as he could feel the steam starting to form around him. He was about to exit out of his hero form. The teachers and staff, realizing what was about to happen, they would turn the camera feed away so that no one could see what were about to happen to All Might. As Deku would go crashing through the victory of the gates, he would soon crash into the ground, completely tired, exhausted, out of breath and energy, as he would pass out, while in pain, happy to know that his team had won. The three boys would be taken to Recovery Girl, including All Might as well, as she would chastise the four of them for acting so recklessly, hitting each one upside the head with her cane, stating that she was getting too old for this, as she would bandage them all up, give them a kiss on the forehead, and leave them to recover. The four being extremely tired, feeling as if they had all been hit by a meteorite. As All Might lay in his own bed, regathering his strength and recovering a bit, he would congratulate the three boys on a job well done, stating that they truly put in good teamwork, and he was especially impressed with Izuku Midoriya, asking him about that new move of his. Deku stated that he really didn't know what he was doing. He just felt he was gathering all of his firepower into both his hands, and combined them into one attack. He didn't think he was going to win, but he just needed enough to push him over the edge, stating that they had just barely managed to get victory. However, all the same, All Might would congratulate them on a job well done. As the rest of the exams would take place, Alpha, doing his best to record all of the data, he would look through to see if there were any more Rangers worthy enough or capable to be added to the team, as 4 had already been assembled. Among many that performed, there were 2 that stood out and caught his eye. Eventually, the exams would be over, and for everyone who had passed and failed, it made no difference as they would all be allowed to go on the summer retrieval trip, allowing them to get their remedial classes in as well, while also getting some training with the rest of the class. As Aizawa looked through all of the data, Alpha would come up to him as well, stating that he had now finished his filing and reports, and he had come across the files of the 2 students who he felt would be most capable of becoming Rangers. As Aizawa took this information in, all that would be left to do was to ask if now was the time to tell them the secret. Was now the time to put the full Ranger team together? Principal Nezu would believe that the time had indeed come, knowing that they couldn't afford to wait any longer. As the students were being sent home, 2 of them would be asked to stay behind. 2 young females, one Momo Yaoyorozu, and the other one, Ochako Uraraka. They would follow Mr. Aizawa to a private conference room. There they would see a bandaged All Might, as well as a bandaged Deku, Todoroki, and Bakugo, and Ida would be there as well, along with a strange-looking little robot, and Principal Nezu. As the principal would allow them to come in, he would tell the young girls to sit down, stating that they had a lot to discuss, and it was going to take a while. Slowly, the secrets would be revealed. The 2 girls with shocks on their faces. They would learn about the origins of Alpha, the secrets behind the powers of Deku, Bakugo, Todoroki, and Ida. They would learn about where Aizawa had gotten his strange ninja suit from. They would even learn about All Might and the origins of One for All, as all of these secrets would be too much to be left up to chance. Of course, the 2 girls would be sworn into secrecy, but they would soon ask, why had they been called? That was when Alpha would step forward, telling them that their work had been noticed throughout the few months, and it had been decided that they would be given the opportunity to become Rangers, if they wanted to accept, of course. This was a little more than they thought they could take in. Of course, they wanted to be heroes, and the idea of being a Power Ranger, well, that sounded amazing, but still, they didn't know what dangers lied ahead. Whoever this Lord Draken was, even if he was from another universe, he was still going to be coming after all of the Rangers across the multiverse as a whole, which meant that he was going to be coming after them at some point. They didn't know if they had the power. They weren't sure if they were worthy enough to stand beside these other heroes. However, Todoroki would quickly step up and reassure Momo, telling her that he believes in her power, that he had been watching her from day one as well, and he believed that she was more than capable of holding her own, stating that if there were going to be anyone to become a ranger and fight beside them, that he couldn't think of anyone better than her. This causing her to blush a little bit at that sentiment. And Deku would speak up for Uraraka, stating that she always had a helpful spirit, and she truly embarked what a ranger was supposed to be. And even Bakugo would chime in and say that she held her own in her fight against him during the sports festival. She could take a punch pretty well, despite being a girl. And All Might would reassure the two, stating that they were going to be trained up to their absolute limits so that they could best be the rangers that they could. With all that being taken into consideration, the two girls will look at each other before giving a nod, stating that they were going to join this team, and that they too were going to become rangers. With that, Alpha would open up his secret compartment once again, pulling out the two of the last three morphers that he had within him. As he held them out to the two girls, they would both reach, and they just felt they knew the ones that they needed to take. Uraraka would take the coin for the pterodactyl, and Momo would take the saber-toothed tiger coin. With that, along with their morphers, the pink pterodactyl ranger and the yellow saber-toothed tiger ranger had now officially been added to the team. After some time in recovery, the 6 rangers would be gathered together in a training hall, along with Aizawa. They were going to have one day to get acclimated with one another before their break, as the group would be meeting with one another for the first time as a team of 6. Aizawa would explain the objectives at hand. Aside from being a part of Class 1A, they now had a new mission: to master their ranger powers and be ready to protect their universe from any and all threats that may come, to prepare for the coming of Lord Dragon and whatever evil forces were out there in the galaxy. As Deku would go home, now having a 3-week vacation before the start of the summer semester and the training camp that Class 1A would be going on, he would get a call one day as he was up having breakfast. The call would be from none other than All Might himself. As Deku would get his bearings about him, he would ask All Might why he were calling. All Might would simply chuckle and ask if young Midoriya would be free, because he had an extra ticket to a special place that he was going to go, and he would like to see if the young hero would like to tag along. Deku would state that he had the free time, but he would wonder where they were going. All Might would simply laugh again, stating that they were going to be going to a special island, and there they were going to meet one of All Might's old friends. This concludes What If Deku Was a Power Ranger? Heroes of the Morphing Grid, Part 5. Thank you for listening to this video, as well as being a member of PowerCore Productions and Podcastings. Please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share with a friend, and hit that bell for post notifications so you can stay up to date on everything that is PowerCore Productions and Podcastings coming out now and in the future. Stay tuned for What If Yamato Was the Captain of Team 7? The Part 1 finale of Naruto, Naruto Legends, coming out tomorrow morning. And tomorrow night, stay tuned for the special premiere of What If Deku Was a Power Ranger? Heroes of the Morphing Grid, the movie, 2 Heroes. But with that, that's going to lead to the end of this video. I'm Javon Harrington with PowerCore Productions and Podcastings, signing off, and I'll see you next time.